that we ask a new generation of journalists, a young journalist, to ask the first question. A very active media. Thank you. This is unexpected. This is the radio, Moscow radio. Why are you standing again for election for the presidency of Russia? What is your objective? What are your missions? What do you plan to do for Russia? And how do you see the state of Russia at the end of your next mandate, if you win another mandate? I have already spoken a lot about the Russia I would like to see materialize in the years to come. I have described it in many major events, in major interviews as well, and I will repeat. Russia must look to the future. Russia must be modern. The political system must be flexible. The economy must be based on the technologies of the future. Labor productivity must increase significantly. I don't want to present my electoral program now. I will have a program, an election program, which, like the other candidates, but I don't think this is the right context in which to present them. However, let me say a few words about the most important points on which I would like to focus people's attention. This is valid for the government and for society as a whole. In concrete terms, infrastructures, healthcare, education. As I've just said, the technologies of the future, labor productivity, are unquestionably what we need to increase the revenues of the population of our country, to increase the income of our people. That, in a nutshell, is my program. AF News. You may ask your question now. Good day, Mr. President. Pending the announcement of your candidacy for the next presidential election, other candidates have announced that they will be standing for the elections as well. The surveys credit them with a very small percentage of the votes. Why, in your view, over the years during which you have been in power, no serious opposition candidate has emerged? And aren't you a bit bored not having a serious opponent? And I would go further along your question. I can see a sign at the back of the room which says Putin bye-bye. Putin bye-bye. Obviously, aging is a population. Perhaps I'd misread the sign. No, Putin bye-bye. It's grandfather. It's how the children in our republic call you. It's a linguistic term for a grandfather. So ask your question now, if you like. You know that our republic and other regions of Russia have been facing a major linguistic issue. The Minister of Education has adopted a decree, and we would like to know, will this linguistic issue still be on at the forefront in the years to come? Do you plan an increase in regional power and in regional languages? I don't think the national question is a particularly acute problem. The question of the language, the aim is to create for all children who live in the Federation of Russia, to give them equal opportunities to succeed, that they should be able to start off in life with the same chances. I have many friends in Tatarstan, but half of the population of Tatarstan, half of the population of Tatar origin live in other regions of the Federation of Russia. There should be equality of chances, of opportunities across Russia. If those children must, of course, be able to speak their traditional language. It's important. I will repeat that later. but they must also speak Russian. Otherwise, if they lag behind in mastering the Russian language, the best universities, the best colleges are in Russian, teach in Russian. So all the children of the Federation of Russia must be able to learn their national, regional language, but also the Russian language. There is a great diversity of regional languages. We are proud of them. It's a cultural asset, and it deserves to be supported. Now, broadening the regions, we must recognize that after the events of the 1990s and the fall of the Soviet Union, the regions of the Federation of Russia were formed based on the ancient criteria, and many regions were economically not viable. So, in terms of optimizing the economies of the regions, it would make sense to broaden the regions, to enlarge the regions. But the autonomous republics, nothing will be imposed on the autonomous republics. I think it will be very negative for the internal union of the Federation of Russia. Any people, all the peoples of the Federation must be free to choose the form, the terms of their coexistence with Russia, which seems to be up. So there will not be a state plan to impose a merger of regions or an expansion or enlargement of regions. Now, to answer your question regarding the opposition, why isn't there a serious opposition candidate to compete with me for the presidency? The simplest answer would be able to say, it's not my job to look after the affairs of the opposition. It's not for me to invent competitors, to encourage competitors. But I think the political and economic worlds must be based on a degree of competition. We need a balanced political system, and a balanced political system is inconceivable without some political competition. So why isn't there a credible opposition candidate in the forthcoming presidential election? They make a lot of noise. The opponents, my opponents, do make a lot of noise. They are very active. In Russia, we have a specific system. The very young people probably don't remember, don't even know what happened in the 1990s and up to the year 2000, and cannot compare that period with the period of today. We have problems. We are assembled here to discuss these problems without embellishing them, without neglecting them. We have to look at the situation. The GDP of Russia since the year 2000 has increased by 75%, and industrial production has increased by 60%. So GDP has risen by 75%, industrial production has in fact increased by 70%, since the year 2000. The processing industries have also recorded high increases in production. Salaries and wages, real salaries and wages, have diminished in the last 3 years because of the global economic crisis. But compared with the beginning of the 21st century, real wages have tripled. Real wages and salaries have tripled. Retirement pensions have been multiplied by 6. Infant mortality has been reduced significantly. The deaths of women giving birth has been reduced by a multiple of 6. And we used to have a declining population, losing 1 million people a year. We have reversed this trend, so the population of Russia is now increasing. So we are now, there is a the trend, the demographic trend is positive now, thanks to the measures we have taken and will be successful in the years to come. We have reversed the trend in terms of demographics. Life expectancy used to be 60, now life expectancy is 73. So for 6 years, we had almost a civil war in this country, where 18-year-olds who were not trained were sent to fight. Now we have a professional army, and our debt has been reduced by 3. The country's reserves have been multiplied by 30. So these results are not average, they are very good results. So when you act in opposition to the government, it's not just a matter of criticizing the regime only. The opposition, a serious opposition, should also propose things. People have reasons for being discontented, and we could always have done better. But when you start comparing our performance, real performance, and with what the opposition who are not part of the system propose, we can see that what they propose is not very convincing. That is the problem with the opposition. A good opposition needs to have an agenda, must have real objectives, not demagogic objectives, and I hope that we will have a serious opposition very soon. So let's continue. I'm now giving the floor to Andrei Kolesnikov. So, for 18 years, for 15 years, you have been president, you've been in power in Russia now. You are standing again for re-election. In what capacity? You can be an independent candidate, you can represent an organization which represents civil society, you can also be proposed by a political party, you can be the candidate of a political party. So on whose behalf are you standing for re-election? I think there isn't a consensus yet to appoint the chairman of the Electoral Commission. Who will be the chairman? Is it important for you that we should know who the... I will be an independent candidate, and I am counting on the support of the political forces of the country who share my vision of Russia and who trust me, be they members of political parties, be they representatives of civil society. So I'm counting on the support of my fellow citizens. As regards the Electoral Committee or Commission, we haven't arrived at a decision regarding the chairman of... There are divergences of opinion, differences of opinion. The debate is ongoing. We haven't been able to agree yet on the identity of the president. It's a technical question, but I agree that it's an important one. And I would hope that the person who will be chosen is an influential person who is respected by the people and who supports my ideas. Let's go to the right now to take a question from a young lady with a blue blouse who isn't holding up a sign. Good day, Maria Karatsova from Kaliningrad. Mr. President, at every press conference, many people ask you to answer their personal problems. You remember a young lady who was suffering from hepatitis and who was hospitalized after your personal intervention. Why are there so many people who see only one solution to their problems, which is to speak directly to the president of the country, and how much time does it take to solve all the problems, all the individual problems of all the Russians through this micromanagement, as it were? Another question, you visited Kaliningrad some time ago, we settled the problem of the roads and of the long waiting queues, so the center of can the center of the Federation of Russia participate in the construction of the last section of road which is missing? There's a section of road which is missing. So one of the priorities of the federal government in Russia in the years to come will be to develop our infrastructures, above all the road network, the airports, port infrastructures, communication infrastructures. And in this context, the road building, particularly in an enclaved region like Kaliningrad, is particularly important. Kaliningrad, with regard to the project you mentioned, we have to put an end to the problems. We have to complete the road link. I cannot tell you exactly now what decision will be taken. There are various choices to be made. It will depend on the means and resources available. We have several priorities: infrastructures, healthcare, education, new technologies, and increasing the income of our fellow citizens. So, for a whole year now, we have been organizing meetings every week with the government to look for the necessary resources, the necessary funding. And when you start talking in very practical terms of concrete problems, the experts, even if they are liberals, they agree that the resources exist on paper, but they don't actually exist. When you start looking at the facts, the figures, the data, when you stop thinking and talking in theoretical terms, you realize that the resources available are lower than we had expected. So it will take a bit of time to answer. We'll be working on this project more intensely. So you talked about micromanagement, of solitary government. There is a myth. The myth of micromanagement is much exaggerated. In the regions and at federal level, and I say so as somebody who was in charge of the government, was head of government at one time. For many years I was head of the government of Russia. You can't imagine the enormous amount of work which the government has to do. It's an extraordinarily complex system. We can't intervene in every area. So some regions are not aware of what's going on in all the regions and everywhere in all the regions. So this live press conference, for example, exists to get direct feedback, and it's a good thing to get direct feedback from people. People can communicate directly with those who are in power, and on a case-by-case basis, we can directly manage the mechanisms to solve the problems that we have been made aware of through this press conference. In my recent meetings with the government, I have regularly addressed the problems that people have made me aware of as head of state. It allows us to initiate processes and to move forward. Another question now. Mr. President, what are the factors of economic growth? which we talk about the recovery of the economy. What are the factors of growth and of economic recovery? Are the figures credible? Are we producing more? Are we producing more machine tools, tractors, more computers? Thank you. Can we add something else to this question? Are there other questions on economic matters? The processing of fish. Yes, we'll come back to fish processing later on. Your question. You have a question. Mr. President, the development of the economy over the last 10 years, 48 projects have been suspended or blocked over the last 10 years. Non-government organizations, NGOs, have blocked some economic projects. Billions of dollars, thousands of jobs are at stake. And thank you for the road which has been built, which we now call the Putin way. And your question has to do also with the environment. So let me answer the first question, then I'll answer yours. As regards economic growth, the economy of Russia is growing. It is evident. These are not figures that are invented. So the increase of GDP, 6%, industrial production over 6% as well. The automobile industry has achieved very good growth rates. The chemical industry, the pharmaceutical industry also have posted very positive production increases. Agriculture this year, the growth will have been 3% overall in 2017. The Federation of Russia will have recorded a 3% growth in the agricultural sector. Harvests were lower at the time of the USSR. Exports, we are the leading exporters in the world for cereals, for example. We are the world's #1 cereal exporter. This is a brilliant figure. So we do have growth. And now, what are the factors that influence such growth? First of all, we have overcome the two oil shocks which affected us in 2014 and 2015. First of all, the